In the middle of tremendous darkness and personal tragedy, false lights are trying to guide us, and they can bring shipwreck. We must be focused on God's pathways and His light in the storms of life. Christ is the light of navigation. Hello, and welcome to the Light of Navigation and this Reflections podcast. My name is Marguerite Lever-Woodall, and I'm an author, speaker, and your host. In these podcasts, I love to explore different life issues and their solutions through the lens of God's wisdom and His words. In this 9th episode called All Those Barking Dogs, I'm exploring what it means to have a lot of ankle-biting, persistent issues in life that just won't go away. How do we handle them? How do you handle them? Join me in giving thought on the tough issues of life, and let's discover God's pathways through them. Your dog is barking and I can't sleep, I said. Here I was, standing on my next-door neighbor's porch at 1 o'clock in the morning. My bathrobe had been hastily slapped on, and my hair was a mess. I just wanted to rest. I've had several neighbors occupy this rental home next to mine over the years, and each one had presented their own problems. Come to think of it, there was a dog involved every time. Another renter on the other side of my home also had a dog that was threatening physical harm with every passerby. At times, it was not leashed and would race to the edge of its owner's front yard, acting as though it would pounce on a person at any moment. Then the owner would become indignant if he was told to control his dog. Then there was the homeowner 2 houses down the street, whose dog was never let out of the backyard. The dog barked constantly, seemingly begging for its owner's attention. It had been chained to a large doghouse permanently. This was a heartbreaking scene to behold every day. The animal was ignored and physically died before its time. It grieves me to this day that I did not call the city to stop the abusive neglect. The first neighbor I've mentioned here also left his dog outside in below freezing temperatures when he'd fallen asleep on his couch from a marijuana-induced stupor. I remember pounding on his door to beg him to take his dog in, and the marijuana smoke would roll out the front door when he answered it. The dog barks frequently, day and night. It was chained to the fence between our homes for hours, out of fear that it would run off or be stolen like the last one was. Of course, my bedroom window is right next to the fence he was chained to. The callousness of this street's occupants towards their animals grieves me to the core of my being. I've never been able to tolerate people's indifference and downright cruelty to their animals. Their attitude speaks volumes about the condition of their hearts in life. When this man and his family moved in, there were immediate problems. On top of everything else, the sound system in his vehicle was monstrous. Week after week, as this neighbor pulled into his driveway, music blasted out at a volume that could be heard miles away. Then he would turn up the sound after he pulled in so that it would literally shake the ground and the windows of the homes on either side of his. I literally couldn't even hear my own television as I tried to watch it. At one point, I deliberately stood outside on my porch staring at him as he arrived home from work one day. I'm talking about the death stare that you hope will send a silent message. In this case, the message would be, turn down the music. Why doesn't he understand? My son died last week from a drug overdose, and I'm already exhausted from the grieving that has just started to ramp up in my life. My silent message was never acknowledged. Why do we seem to think the stare would work anyway? It's occurred to me that there are other dogs that can bark incessantly in daily life. There's a lot of them. Maybe the recognition of them will help us to rethink how we're handling life as a whole. Those other barking dogs are the ankle biters of life. Like a car breaking down periodically, a never-ending financial crisis, or just too much on our plate more often than not. What about a job situation that is a daily issue and irritant? And let's not forget the major dog bites of a bad medical diagnosis or the death of a friend or loved one. I've tried so very hard to let it all go. I desire to enter into the rest and the peace of God that He speaks of in His Word. But because of verbal abuse I've endured in my past, I've lived in a constant state of offense emotionally and mentally most of my life. Some experience it as being relationally defensive all the time. I don't want to be so easily angered, upset, and devastated by people or life's events. Being easily angered and offended at every challenge life presents makes me feel like there's a lot of barking dogs everywhere. Those things make us feel out of control with no relief in sight, and they're not going away. The inconvenience of the situations slam us like a hammer. Then we think, how dare they turn our world upside down and cause this chaos? What I was doing before this sudden onslaught and interruption was important to me. The next line of defense is to try to take control of the situation. Maybe the barking will stop them. When trying to take control doesn't pan out, we become angry. Anger is usually the first line of defense in these situations. Finally, the last phase that cycles around is a good cry to release all the frustration the ankle biting has caused. It's a vicious cycle that's never ending. My point is this: living in the peace of God in every situation does not come easily. It's not an instant fix, and it's only found in an ongoing life journey of close relationship with Him. There's a trust that can run much deeper with God in daily circumstances. This trust is not born out of the ease or convenience in life. It's birthed through its hardships. I can just hear it now. Well, that's just great. I don't want to hear that. Well, that's how I feel sometimes, too. If we are easily offended, others will disrupt our world, bringing chaos, unease, and hardship. Sometimes it's severe. Offense follows closely on the heels of anger, and then unforgiveness is not far behind. All of this reflection began stirring within me after I walked away from my neighbor's front door. It was just one more complaint about his barking dog. Then God steps into my moments and drops his what if thoughts. What if his barking dog opens a door to a conversation instead, which reaches out in the love of Christ? What if my neighbor sees someone reaching out with kindness, truth, and patience instead? What if this neighbor needs Christ in his life and I'm the only Jesus in his path? We cannot let the barking dogs of life engulf us in offense and sway us away from trusting in and operating in the love of God that reaches out to those around us. In the defense of those neighbors' dogs, or any dog for that matter, I'd like to share a side note here before I close. I'm a dog lover, and I've owned some awesome ones over the years. I found the following statement about dogs posted next to a veterinarian's desk one day. It radically impacted me, so much so that I copied it and have kept it with me for some time. It does tie into my story here, and I'm going to flip the script, so to speak, and share it with you. It says this: if you can start the day without caffeine, if you can get going without energy pills, if you can always be cheerful, ignoring aches and pains, if you can resist complaining and boring people with your troubles, if you can eat the same food every day and be grateful for it, if you can understand when your loved ones are too busy to give you any time, if you can overlook it when those you love take it out on you when, through no fault of yours, something goes wrong, if you can take criticism and blame without resentment, if you can ignore a friend's limited education and never correct him, if you can resist treating a rich friend better than a poor friend, if you can face the world without lies and deceit, if you can conquer tension without medical help, if you can relax without liquor, if you can sleep without the aid of drugs, if you can honestly say that deep in your heart you have no prejudice against creed, color, religion, or politics, then, my friend, you are almost as good as your dog. I had to ask myself one question after reading this that day. As a follower of Christ, are any of these attributes mine as well? Am I as good as my dog? Are you as good as yours? Great is the peace of those who love thy law, and nothing shall by any means offend them. Psalm 119, verse 165. Thank you for taking time to listen today. If this podcast would be an encouragement for someone you know who has a lot of ankle biters in life, please pass it on. Your comments are valued, and subscribing would also be deeply appreciated. In the next episode of Reflections for Wisdom, I'll be sharing about someone I was very close to and will never forget. Many of you have known someone like this too. It's about the gift that God gives of a loyal, loving companionship from a different quarter. This is about Pepper's song.